welcome back to another episode of Minority Reportz podcast and digital series. I am your host, Mona Sheikh, you guys. Very excited. It's a weekend eve, almost. This week has been exhausting for me. I don't know how it's been for you guys, but it's just been today it's been a long day. Tomorrow is another very long day for me. So I am very ready for the weekend. But right now, I have a very special guest. He is, I would say he's like my oldest comedian friend I've known ever since I've moved to Los Angeles. And we've just worked together so many times. And I'm very excited to have him on. And he is actually, let me give you a fabulous intro for him because he deserves it. He is the only Indian Jewish comedian in the world. He's been featured in, my goodness, so many publications, India Times. He has an amazing, amazing festival that he runs that is really like a groundbreaking festival called Desi Comedy Festival. And Desi stands for slang for South Asian. So here is my very talented friend, Samson Koletkar. How are you?
Good, Mona. How are you?
I'm good. I wanted to give you a good intro, especially what you've done with Desi Comedy Festival. I think is just so amazing.
Oh, thank you. I wish we could do it again, right? When the pandemic is over.
Man, how have you been holding up during the pandemic? With like us being stand-up comics, not being able to perform, how have you been holding up? And you're married with 2 kids. How is that going?
I don't know. The pandemic has not been fun, right? I was telling, in the early days, I used to tell people how it cut off both my social interactions. Like my day job, I used to get to interact with people. That got cut off. And then I used to run the comedy club in Oakland every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And that got cut off too. So it's like double jeopardy for me. No social life at all, stuck at home. So
that's
not fun.
Whammy. That's a double whammy. Samson, that's so interesting. I mean, because, you have your day life and then you have your comedy life. You're right. I mean, that is a lot of withdrawal. That's a lot of like, my God, I've like lost all these connections, Are you like, I mean, I have so many married friends with kids and they're like, I'm going to blow my brains out. How are you?
I'm okay. The kids are fine. The kids are okay.
Yeah.
I have fun with them. So that's not been the problem. That's my only human interaction left.
Yeah, that's right.
Thankfully, enjoyable one. But I know some people don't deal with, I have my moments with my kids too where they drive me nuts. But generally speaking, they're fine.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's hereditary. They get it for me.
Oh, okay. You're taking credit for it. That's fair, Samson. I met your wife. She's a sweet, sweet woman. She's great. I do adore her. I'm going to dive into this with you. So it's interesting that you are one of my oldest, comedian friends that I've known for a long time.
I know.
I've been there in your life when you had some really significant changes happening.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I was thinking about this. How did we meet first? Like, where was the first show we did together? I'm pretty sure it must have been some show we did together. And I can't remember. It's been that long. Right?
And so, I can't remember either. I don't
exactly, right? It's one of those things where the memory is so foggy and cloudy because we've done so many shows together. And we go back such a long way that I don't remember that moment in time. Like, that's where we met. I have no recollection where it was.
Me neither. I don't. You're absolutely right. I'm just like, did we meet the Desi Comedy? I'm like, Desi Comedy Fest.
Nah, you did the pre-Desi Comedy Fest show that led to the Desi Comedy Fest, remember?
That's right. I'm one of the original 5.
Exactly. And then you were also, my younger one's born March 2014. And the show we did was August 2014. So we obviously did things before that because you stayed at my place in that March. Your mom was here with you.
That's right.
So I don't even know what else we did. Did we do Sultans of... No, what was that? A Fanatical comedy tour? Or did you do something with my Mahatma Moses comedy tour?
I don't think
it was Mahatma Moses. Yeah, because that was like 2009, 10 maybe.
Yeah.
I think we met somewhere in like 2012. I have a feeling.
Probably. I think I met you just about, maybe I was a year into Los Angeles, having moved from New York. And I met you, and I think I've just known you ever since. I remember. I mean, it's amazing. Like
I remember where.
It's so I don't even know how the hell we even met. It's fascinating to me. But what's interesting to me, Samson, about you is that we've done all these shows together. I've stayed at plays. I've known you for such a long time. I don't really know a lot about your upbringing in India and that journey to America. Like, I know nothing about that part of your life. So I really want to kind of, I know I think whenever we hung out, we've kind of touched upon it, but we've never really delved into it. I mean, you are, first of all, the only Indian Jewish comedian in the world, correct?
As far as I know.
As far as you know. I mean, how big is the Jewish population in India?
Here's how I describe it. There's 1 billion plus Indians. There's barely 5,000 Jews left in the country.
Wow.
We are like the little dot on the forehead of the entire face of India. That's how tiny we are. The dot probably has more real estate on the human face than Jews have in the population of India. It's such a small percentage. As a math major, I can't do the math. But it's a very tiny community. Mostly centered around Bombay, Mumbai, whatever you like to call it.
Yeah.
And that's where I grew up. And within that small community too, there are factions, right? There's the ultra-Orthodox, there are the ultra-Reform, and then every possible thing in between. So it was fascinating to me growing up that you'd think that a community as small as like a few thousand would be very homogeneous, but it's not.
Right.
We still fought with each other.
Samson, what I'm fascinated by is how did Jewish folks end up in India?
So according to the story that's told to me, and one of my favorite things is to poke holes at all this historic made up stuff, right? I go all the way back to the genesis of Judaism and disapprove the whole theory of Jews. But according to the story, there was the second temple destruction in Jerusalem back 2,000 years ago. And when that happened, there were 12 tribes that spread across the world. One of them landed in the west coast of India through a shipwreck. So there was a ship carrying whatever number of Jews that wrecked on the shores of just south of Bombay. And then 7 couples survived. And that place, Navgaon, I was trying to recollect the name. It's called Navgaon, right? And if you go there, there are 7 wells where they have buried the dead bodies from the ship from 2,000 years old. So that's sort of the starting point for Jews in India. What fascinates me is how they went from 7 couples to, at its peak, 70,000 Jews in India, right? That's a very productive community.
5,000. Is it 5,000 or 70,000?
It's 5,000 now, right? I'm talking about the peak, right? When pre-Israeli independence, there was a larger population. But when Israel was formed, a lot of folks migrated to Israel. A lot of Indian Jews migrated to Israel as well.
Makes sense.
There was a rapid depletion in the population too.
That makes sense.
I mean, I'm rounding it down to 5,000. I'm sure it's a little more than that, but...
Wow. How interesting. So wait, so do you not believe in that story, or that is an actual story?
That's the story that's been told to me. Now, how accurate, how factual? If there were 7 couples and now there's like whatever amount of Jews there are, there's got to be some mixing.
Yeah.
Right? So this whole theory of lineage by mother and your mother has to be Jewish. That means there were 7 women who basically created the whole community. I'm like, look, if you practice Judaism, if you believe in it, good for you. If you don't, big deal, right? So this is another fascinating thing for me. And this happens in every culture and every in religion and country too, right? Who's a good Jew, who's a bad Jew, who's a real Jew, who's not a real Jew. And everybody has their own definitions. If you're ultra-Orthodox, you have your own restrictive definitions. And you know what I mean? So I am very loosey-goosey. Religion is my favorite joke.
I mean... I think I actually envy my Jewish friends because in Judaism, there's no concept of hell or heaven or hell and heaven, correct?
No, we call it the synagogue and the school.
Hell, which is heaven? Do tell.
Sorry, those are both hell. The synagogue and home, maybe. I don't know. Right? Like, I never understood the concept of praying and why we had to wake up at 6 a.m. to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, if
Jews wake up 6 o'clock in the morning to pray.
So there's 3. We pray 3 times a day. You overtake us. You do like 5 times, right?
No, we are an overkill.
You're the pioneers.
Yes,
overachievers, right? So we're just 2 steps behind. We are like Def Leppard, 2 steps behind. So we pray morning, afternoon, and evening.
Yeah.
And the evening one is timed with the sunset. The morning one is timed with the sunrise.
Yeah.
So you got to be up before sunrise and get there to start your prayers. But apparently after that, God doesn't like it if you wake up after sunrise.
Got it. Because God wants you to be an early riser because...
Yeah, and he wants to hear the same shit repeated all over for the last 6,000 years that it's been repeated on every single hour of the time zone across the earth, right? So Jews in Australia wake up in their sunrise and they blare the same stuff, and then the Western Australia Jews wake up, they blurt out the same stuff, and then the East Asia, and then South Asia, and then Middle East, and then it just goes on like 24 hours a day. Can you imagine being God listening to 5,000, not 5,000, whatever, 5 million or 8 billion people talking to you the same things over and over every single day for every hour?
Exactly. I mean, listen, that's why I think God has just left the earth on automatic pilot at this point. He's like, I give up. I'm not dealing with this. You idiots, figure it out. I want nothing to do with this.
I also like the phrase that God and man looked at each other and said, my creator. Right? So
interesting.
I'm a firm believer of that. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. You know, Samson, when you were growing up, I mean, you know, what I've always loved, you know, my ancestry is from India. My father was born in India, in UP. My nani, my grandmother, my mom's mom, was born in Delhi. So, you know, we have my grandfather, my mom's dad was Iranian, migrated from Iran to India, and then India to Pakistan, right? Yep. So he loved
It's a fascinating mix, right? Yeah. So I don't know this very accurately because my parents' generation wasn't very open about things to discuss, but my mom's also from Kashmir, all right?
That's where you get the coloring from.
And pre-independence, as far as I know, my mom's grandparents' family was in the Punjab part of Pakistan.
Got it.
And during partition, they switched over to the India side, and then they resided in Kashmir for a while before they moved to Bombay. So I have some Pakistani roots. As far as I know.
Of course you do. I mean, everybody has, like, if you're Indian and Pakistani, it's all mixed, man. All that, you know, migration, all that murder and killing that went down, it's heartbreaking, you know. I mean, I wonder, you know, something like, so for us, right, growing up in Pakistan, the only diversity you have is a Shia person. That's the extent of your diversity. In India, it isn't like that. You're going up next to a Hindu, a Muslim, a Jain, you know.
Especially in Bombay, right? Bombay, I call it the original melting pot of the world.
Yeah.
Because you have Iranis who are in Bombay, a significant community.
That's right.
Parsis, as they are called. You have Jews and Muslims and Christians and Hindus and Buddhists and Sikhs and Jains and every possible thing under the sun, right?
Yeah.
They've all been there, which is one of my jokes, right? Because here in America, when somebody disagrees with you, you're told to go back to where you come from.
That's right.
And I'm like, I grew up in Bombay for like 2 decades, and people have lived in that city for centuries.
That's
and
right.
You can debate and disagree and argue with anybody on anything. Yeah. Nobody ever told you to go back to where you come from, right? What they told you was to go to Pakistan.
Even if you're not, even if you never lived in Pakistan, they're like, just go to Pakistan. We disagree.
Yeah, the go back to where you come from here is the go to Pakistan there.
That's hilarious. Yeah. No, I mean, I think I'm always. I mean, when you were growing up, was your neighborhood primarily like a Jewish community, or you guys just kind of grew up in the mix of all these?
So, it's a mix, right? Because first of all, the density in Bombay is so high, right? Right now, it's 18 million people in that city.
Wow.
That's like half of California lives in San Francisco. Now, that's Bombay, right? So the density makes it impossible to really isolate. So where I lived, we were right on the border. There was a Muslim wedding hall on this side. I actually shot a video on my phone in 2016, the last time I was in India, just walking through my neighborhood. Because it was so fascinating, right? First of all, everything is much more compact and closer, right? Because it's so crowded.
Yeah.
And then within a single shot, you can see there's a Hindu temple, there's a mosque, and there's a church. And they're literally hop, skip, and jump away.
Wow.
Yeah. You could probably stretch your arms and touch 2 of those places of worship, right? Really next to each other. So everything is such a hodgepodge that one of the fascinating things about this that I loved growing up in my building where I grew up, we would celebrate like 5 New Years, right?
Yeah.
The Christian New Year, the Parsi New Year, the Jewish New Year, the Muslim New Year, the Hindu New Year. And every New Year, you get some cool stuff from your neighbors, like sweets and, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I'm like, this is great. This is fun. I love this multiculturalism. So
Exactly.
I need all 5 New Year goodies. I'm not saying no to anything.
I listen. I mean, I wouldn't either. I'm all about, I'm going celebrating Diwali.
You know the Sheer Kurma, right?
Sheer
Kurma, right? So we have these things, right? There are certain stereotypes that apply, which is Sheer Kurma from a Muslim family will taste better than Sheer Kurma from any other family.
Right.
Right?
Because that's your specialty.
Yeah. If you want to eat what you know is chivda as the snacky thing that we eat, right? It's going to be good from a Maharashtrian family. No other family makes it good enough. If you want to eat certain things, they are made well by certain communities and you just stick with it. Like you want to eat a biryani, go eat a Hyderabadi biryani. Don't even experiment on anything else. So and food has a lot of correlations in my talks.
And what do Indian Jewish folks specialize in? What's their
I don't know if there's a particular thing we specialize in. One of the things that I've not seen anybody else do that I used to cook, and a lot of my friends were like, I'm like, yeah, this is Indian Jewish stuff. There's a lot of red curry, chicken. Red curry is pretty common, right? We used to make a green curry version of it.
Okay.
And coconut influence. Again, the Konkan coast, the west coast of India, lots of coconut in the food there. So that was slightly different. Chicken, the black-eyed beans, you can put all kinds of things and make food out of it. Yeah. The other thing that I've not seen anywhere else, those poha, what is it called in like flat rice? You know what poha is? Like the rice that's flattened and then
it's not the puffy rice. It's not the puffy one.
Not the puffy one, right? The flattened rice.
Okay.
It's dry and flat, and then you soak it in water.
Okay.
And then you mix it with coconut water and then some sugar and grated coconut.
Okay.
And we call it god poha, like sweet poha. Poha, P-O-H-A is the word for it. And the predominant population there of Hindus, Maharashtrians, they eat the spicy version of it. They have like onion poha or potato poha. We make sweet poha. And that nobody else I've seen do. It's a very Jewish thing in India. And I have to love eating that. And you can eat some really spicy curry with this sweet poha, so it has that sweet and spicy taste.
Yeah.
So good. Now that I'm saying it, I'm like, I gotta make it. I can't. I don't know how to, but I should call my mom and figure it out.
ask her how to make it. I mean, Samson, when you were growing up in India, was your family reformed? Were you guys were your parents religious? Were you go to synagogues? What was that like for you?
My family is a khichdi, as I call it in the local lingo, right? It's a hodgepodge.
It's a hodgepodge.
My mom's Kashmiri Punjabi. My dad's Jewish from Bombay.
So your mom's not Jewish. Your mom converted.
She converted. Because back in those days, if you both were from different religions, your children are illegal, whatever that means.
What? Wait, back when? What are we talking? What year?
70s, early 70s. I haven't explored the Indian constitution and the laws. There are things that I've heard and then that I've not gone back to really explore, is this really right or wrong? But there was questions around legality of kids if you intermarried, right? It wasn't such a commonly accepted thing to intermarry.
Wow. So wait, if kids are illegal, then what? You get thrown in jail? What happens?
I don't know if it's an illegal thing or if it was more of a societal pressures.
Right.
It may not be actual legal thing. It may be a societal mindset that, you're marrying outside the religion, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, then I don't know if my mom converted. Was it because of societal pressure or did she just want to? The thing that baffles me the most, right, is this is a Hindu custom, but apparently also practiced by Jews because my mom's birth name was Vimla Thapar. She married and became Esther Koletkar, right? And that bothers me. It's like, dude, your whole identity is wiped clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I don't get that. The second problem with that whole tradition is I can't find any of my old crushes on Facebook. It's like, what's their name now? They're married. What's their name? I don't know how to find them. I just know them by their original name.
That's true. That's true. There's no way to track them down because they all took their husband. Samson, it's interesting. What's her name? The comedian. I'm forgetting. She has this really great joke, and she makes that exact same point that you're making, which is you're like, it bothers me that my mom's identity was wiped clean, and it's just like, okay, well, either she's going to take her dad's name or she's going to take her husband's name. Either way, it's a man's name that's being taken.
You know where I broke the trend, all right?
Yeah.
So I always call my sister the stepping stone, all right? Because She's older than me, 5 years older than me, and she would push the boundary, and then I would get to push it farther, right?
Got it.
So when my sister got married, uh, she had two marriages. The first one, she married a Muslim boy, and also had that same nonsense happen where her name was changed, right? And this was like post-college haste of getting married. Whatever. It didn't last long. Under a year, they separated.
And how were your parents about that? I mean, Jewish and Muslims getting married. I mean, what is that like?
Exactly, right? So I don't think. Again, it was so short-lived.
That's right.
I was in my college years busy with my own shenanigans. So
sure.
I was like, whatever is happening, and so they split up very quickly. I think within a year, and then she married another Hindu guy, and she took his last name, but she kept her first name. And I was like, yeah, good sis. It's a good step ahead. Like you kept your first name.
Yeah.
You changed your last name. Fair enough. When I got married, we got married here in America.
Right. Your wife's Hindu. Your wife's Hindu.
My wife's Hindu, right? And I was like, there's no need to change names. You keep your name and I keep my name. And it's like person A married person B. How hard is that for people to understand? It's like, oh, wait, you guys have separate last names? How are you married? Like, what? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then the step that we went further ahead from them. So she kept not just her first name and last name, but when we had our first child, I insisted that my child's middle name should not be my name, which is the tradition. My child's middle name should be my wife's last name.
Jeez, Samson.
No, think of it, right? Like she's a byproduct of both of us, right?
Yeah.
So there's like a half and half identity.
Yeah.
All right, she gets my last name and she gets your middle name and she gets her first name, which is unique to her, not overlapping with any of us. And I don't see the issue there. It's perfectly fine. I understand, like amongst Mexicans, Latinos, they take like 5 names. They have all the possible names in their name.
Sure.
You do whatever you like. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna break some traditions here. And her parents, I remember when I did that, they couldn't like in their heads figure out why.
It's too progressive, Samson. It's too progressive. You're too much of a feminist, man. You're too much. That's amazing. I mean, Samson, it's interesting that you're making all these points. I always feel in order for a society to move forward and have progress in the way that you're expressing it, it's the allies, it's the men, it's the people who are sitting in a position of power, such like yourself, in a way that are the ones who are saying, no. We need to change some things here. This, you know what? She's carrying the baby. It's my genetics and her genetics. She also gets to keep her parent, her family name.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
The child has identity from 2 families and it continues.
100%. I'm 100,000,000% on board with you. Samson,
let's start a petition, changing the rules.
I mean, Samson, I think what I've always I think I loved and I've admired about you is, your family's just such a mix of just lovely people. Besides you having 2 absolutely beautiful daughters, you have your second baby that you have. She's adopted and she is from a Muslim Afghani family, which
Afghani, yes.
I mean,
I know the Afghani part. I don't know the Muslim part, but I'll assume majority of Afghanis are Muslim. So, because the way the adoption happened, right, it was a safe surrender, which basically means the woman came into the hospital, delivered the baby, and then she left, surrendered the baby to the state, and she left. No questions asked, no charges pressed in a blue state. In some other state, she would have gotten arrested, but she decided it was better for the baby to be given away because she couldn't raise it. And then we were contacted by the agency, the state agency, because we were in queue looking to adopt. And we brought her home. And it's like the only thing they told us was that her mom was Afghan, and they didn't give us any more information. I think there was pretty much that's all that we know, right? And it's also to keep the mother's identity protected. So they don't want her identity to be revealed either. So we were like, fine. The only difference for us was because they had no medical history records and everything. They're like, hey, we may have to do some extra tests. I'm like, yeah, do it.
Right.
Brought 2 bottles of blood instead of 1. It's okay.
And she's only 2-3 days old at the time.
So we met her at 2 days old. She was born the day before, and by the time the initial groundwork happens from the hospital contacting the social services agency to them getting some paperwork in place before they start going through the list of potential adoptees, reaching us took them about a day. So we got, this was like a middle of work day. It was a Wednesday or a Thursday at work. And I was about to walk into a pretty big client meeting and got a call from an unknown number. So I didn't pick it up. Immediately, a minute later, I got a call from my wife like, hey, it's the agency. Pick it up right now. Because if you don't, we miss our chance. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I pick it up. And then they ask us like, look, here's the situation. It's 2 p.m. right now. You need to confirm now. Like if we keep the phone, we're going to go to the next person in queue. So you decide on the phone now. And if you do want it, and we say yes, then like you got to be here in an hour to sign the paperwork. If not, we are moving on to the next one. So I go to my CEO's office. I'm like, dude, I got to go. There's a baby at the hospital that we had to go sign papers for. And he was like, yeah, go run, right? So I bolt. And I'm like 40 minutes away from the hospital. So my wife is closer. She gets there before I do. And then we do all the paperwork.
Yeah.
Funny part was we were like, oh, yeah, we got the baby. Let's take her home. And the hospital is like, slow down. Do you have a car? Do you have baby food? Do you have diapers? Do you have any of this stuff?
Right.
Look at the basics that we don't even think about. So
that's right.
For one more night. And then the third day we could bring her home.
Right. Because you had to go for... I think what I absolutely love about that story, that adoption story about your daughter, Samson.
And you were there.
I was there.
Staying at my home that day. You remember we brought the baby home and your mom and you were there. It was like, wow.
I was there. You know what I remember, Samson, is that I was there because there was a taping going on in I believe it was Oakland I had to go to for a gig that I got booked on, and then I asked you, I was like, Samson, is it okay if I come and crash with you with my mom? And you were like, yeah, you were always very kind and you opened your home to us. And I remember coming and staying with you guys. And I remember it was like, I was there for like 3-4 days. And the second day you were like, we got the baby. And I was like, what are you talking about? You're like, yeah. You're like, we were on the waiting list. And we were like, oh my God, you guys are going to get
Yeah, because I remember we had not spoken about this at all, right? But we had been preparing for this for about a year. Because there's a whole licensing process and home evaluation. There's a lot of stuff that goes into being approved before you can adopt a baby. And once you get the certification and the license, it still takes time to match.
Yeah.
So people at my work knew about it. A lot of my other friends knew about it because I've been talking about like, hey, we've gone through all this. We're going to do it. So it didn't come as a surprise to my CEO when I told him this has to happen now. And he's like, yeah, go do what you need to do. But I remember you and your mom were like, what? Where did this happen? How did this happen? Where did that come from?
And I was like, wait, and no, because I so specifically remember you walking down the stairs and being like, you guys are lucky for us. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it's like, we just got baby. I was like, baby? What baby? Yeah. What are you talking about? You're like, oh, we've been on the list for, to adopt a child. And I was just like, wow, this is wonderful.
We had India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan under the same roof.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There was a lot of unity going on that day. No, I love that story so much. And I think my mom to this day is just like, how is he? How is that nice Jewish boy with his Hindu wife who adopted a Muslim child? These are the people. My mom's like, these are the people that make the world better. These are the people that make the world a better place. And I was like, I agree with you, Mom. I agree with you. Yeah, she always remembers you guys with such love and fondness.
And if it asks for any more diversity, she has an Italian name.
Right, that's it. Come on. If she can check off any more boxes. Sometimes when you guys, I usually hear a lot of horror stories about adoption. Like people are like, I've been on the waiting list for years, 8 years, 9 years. Do you guys, that is such a serendipitous thing almost where it was just meant for you guys. Like you waited 1 year, which is kind of unheard of actually.
Yeah, dude. It was lucky in a way, right? I'm not a big believer of luck, but it was more just like circumstantial luck.
Yeah.
And some people do wait a long time. The younger the child you want to adopt, the longer the wait. And especially because we were not going with the private adoption model, right? Where you pay an agency to adopt a newborn. We were going the public adoption, which means you're adopting from the system of orphanages, what are called child homes here, group homes here, right? So it's harder to find a newborn there. It's harder to find a younger child there. Generally, the kids in the adoption system are much older.
Yeah.
So we by the way, when we decided to not do the private adoption, we were thinking about India, of course, right? As our first option, like, can we adopt a kid from India? The legal process is too long. So if we adopt a newborn, by the time all the paperwork gets done and the child's here, they'll probably be in high school. So like, okay, that's not an option.
Really? That long? No, you're exaggerating.
Yeah, it's no. It's a long the naturalization process, like getting green card for Indians. 6 years is the fastest you can do.
Wow.
It's the slowest green card process for any country origin in America, right?
Really?
Yes. Lots of other countries you'll get it faster. Pakistan is an American ally. India is not. India aligned with Russia back in the Cold War days, right? So that's probably the reason for the delay.
Interesting.
And at one point, one of my friends suggested,
Not
why
after
don't you think
September
about...
11th, though, Samson.
Yeah. So one of my friends had actually suggested, why don't you consider adopting from Pakistan, right? Because that makes it much, much easier. It's an ally and the process, the paperwork is much faster. And so we actually were like, hey, that's a good idea. Finally, a chance to go to Pakistan, right?
Yeah.
Because I've been wanting to do that for a long time. But then we figured, as the process evolved, we just decided, let's just do it locally because there are kids in the US who need a home too. So why don't we just do it here?
Yeah.
And this literally came out of the blue, right? Like you can't plan or prepare, and that's the tricky part about when you are having a baby naturally, right? You're mentally prepared because you can see the belly's growing in 9 months. You start counting down. You start preparing.
That's right.
This one just popped out of nowhere. It's like, hey, baby, now pick it up. They're like, oh shit, let's go, right? Exactly. And you bring her home, and we're all excited, like, oh, we got a newborn baby. How cool is that? Yeah. And all that coolness and excitement disappeared in 2 days because now we realize newborns don't sleep.
That's right.
And so I'm waking up 6 times a night, and I'm like, man, we should have adopted a 3-year-old. At least they sleep.
I wonder what your kind of thinking was behind getting a brand new baby instead of getting like a toddler or maybe a slightly older baby.
So we had put our thing as we wanted to adopt somebody younger than the older one. And by the time we adopted, the older one was 3 years old, right? So we were like, okay, 0 to 3. And the very logical reason that my wife and I decided was because we know how to raise a kid from 0 to 3, we can handle a 0 to 3. If we suddenly get a 6-year-old, we've never dealt with a 6-year-old, right? So it may be harder for us. So that was our criteria of going in. Now, what also happens, the longer you stay in the queue, the more flexible you become on what you want, what you don't want, right? So
you guys...
I actually talk about this in my stand-up. I have a whole 30-minute routine that I'm hoping to put up on YouTube soon, which is this whole process of adoption, everything that we learned along the way, because there's so many assumptions we have. Sure. If you have never adopted, you haven't explored it, it's very simple, right? We get our ideas from the movies. And it's not that easy. It's not that straightforward. There's a lot of things you have to think about. Some of it is some really hard decisions you have to make. And it really makes you introspect a lot. It really brings out your own childhood to you because I say this in a very joking way, but it's much faster, easier, and cheaper to have a baby than to adopt one. To make a baby than to adopt one.
I agree with that. Listen, there could be just one drunken night.
That's the whole thing. Like you prepare so much for adopting one, but when you're making one, there's no you could do what you want.
There's just
figure your own things out.
Precisely. There's definitely no thinking going on, to tell you that. That's for sure. Man, Samson, this whole, thing about adoption is like amazing to me. So wait, what happened with the Pakistan idea about you guys going to Pakistan to adopt? What happened with that?
Because we decided to just localize our search. Like, hey, we find something within the county. If it doesn't work in the county, we'll go to the adjoining counties and then further out, maybe the state, maybe the West Coast, right? So we were slowly expanding the geography. Yeah. But before we got too desperate to expand, this happened. So we stopped.
Right. Samson, for you guys didn't want to just try to have another kid of your own. You were like, no, we'd rather just adopt.
So that was one of the things that my wife and I had spoken about before we got married. And I don't know how the conversation came up, but this whole idea of, hey, we get married, we have a kid, and then adopt the second one and balance the gender. That was our plan.
And you both were totally on board.
We both had the exact same chain of thought, right?
Wow.
The only thing that altered there was we didn't balance the gender. We have 2 girls, right? So
you wanted a boy and a girl?
No, our initial thought was if we have a girl, we'll adopt a boy. If we have a boy, we'll adopt a girl. Okay. And then along the way, the thought process changed to, if you were going to have a second child, you can't control the gender of the child. Why be selective when you're adopting? So we'll take what comes. And that's the process I'm talking about, right? Because we also went in with this narrow ideas of A, B, C, D. Here are the criteria.
Yeah.
But it opens up a lot because there are much harder criteria to think about. We think about like age, gender, and race, right?
Yeah.
Stereotypically thinking, I should be thinking I want a Indian baby, brand new, and zero defects, right? That's where our search ends.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And so as we went through the process of the whole licensing process, a lot of things changed and evolved.
Yeah. Samson, I'm a big adoption person, so I don't have any plans on having my own children.
But I have an offer for you.
Oh, do you?
I have 2 well-fed brown kids up for adoption.
I'd be more than happy. Well, I'm already their auntie, so I'd be more than happy to babysit them anytime.
I'm not talking about babysitting. I'm talking about adopting.
You're like, take
I want you to suffer 24/7.
just to prepare myself. Is that the prep that I'm supposed to do, Samson, or is that a permanent offer? What is that?
So that's the other complaint I have, right? Because I remember when we were planning our first kid, a lot of my friends who with kids, they would always offer us a weekend with their kid. They're like, oh, wait, you plan to have a kid? Come spend a weekend with my kid. Because that prepares you, right?
Sure.
And I'm like, dude, the 2 years that we were planning to get married, nobody offered me a weekend with their wife. How about preparing me for that too, right? I think it's an unjust world.
That's a good one, Samson. That's a good one. Listen, some guys might even take you up on that offer, but that's a different kind of relationship. That's a very different. That's a new thing that's happening out there. That's a new thing, man. I mean, was that a thing for you guys? I mean, I know that you guys, at least that's my understanding, that I think you guys were telling me that you're gonna raise your second daughter. You're gonna raise her like, and I guess eventually tell her, or have maybe already told her.
Oh, she knows already.
Yeah.
That was another thing, right? Like I don't get this. Again, it's a movie influence more than anything.
Yeah.
Because a lot of my friends would ask us those questions like, hey, are you gonna tell her? What if she wants to go look for her birth parents? I'm like, you've been watching too many movies, dude. Like it doesn't always work that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to stand-up, I know so many folks who have been adopted, who have adopted. There's so many adoption stories that I've heard from my comedian friends. And you realize it's like one in a, I don't know what even the ratio is, 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000, 1 in a million who goes looking for their ancestors. But
really? Samson,
I don't know what the percentage is, but it's not every second kid is going to go look for their birth parents. That's just not how it is.
Wow. That's the thing. There it is. Well, there you go. You busted a myth for me.
And for all we know, my kid might be that 1 in 1,000. But
listen, we don't know.
But if that's what they want to do, then so be it, right? Like I firmly believe in like not hiding things, right? Where they are not relevant. Maybe a timing thing, but we didn't like as soon as she could talk, we were like, hey, do you know you're adopted, right? Like it wasn't that way, right? But anytime anything came up, we were like, yeah, this is how it is. And because when the kid's growing up, she's looking at like, how come you have a big tummy when she was little, but I was not? There's no pictures of me in your tummy. They think about things, right? So they're gonna ask you questions.
And so observant.
They are very observant, right? And so my dad used to say this: once you lie, you have to follow it up with 1,000 lies, right? To cover up for that lie. It's so much easier to speak the truth. And I'm like, well, this is what it is. And most of us are afraid how we're going to explain it to them. And you don't have to, right? You just have to be honest about how you understand it. And they try to understand what you understand out of it. Yeah. And do I have a perfectly valid, justifiable explanation to a question? Why did my birth mom not want me? And the answer is, we don't know. And she gets it that we don't know. Right. And then we told her that because we never met her birth mom, we never had a chance to talk. We don't know.
Right.
And so if you really get.
How old was she? I mean, much like she's 7 now.
I don't remember exactly, but that's the other part, right? Like along the way, and you don't know when those questions are popping up. They just pop up randomly. So
right.
It's not like, hey, let's sit down and have a talk.
Right. Because they're just asking, exploring, and being like, oh, I have that.
They have a reflective moment, they think about it, and they go somewhere else, they ask you the most random question after that. So
that's right.
I think yeah, that's the way I like it. Just be like, make
It's
it
so
easy
funny.
for everybody.
Yeah, my niece, when I think she was about maybe 6 or 7 years old, I think same as your daughter. They were watching a movie, and there's a scene about the bride getting married, and she's crying as she's leaving her relatives. And my niece is sitting there, and she starts crying, and my brother is like, "Why are you crying, baby?" And she was like, "Daddy, Mommy, I just want you to know I'm never getting married because I never want to leave you. I'm never going to do what she's doing," right? So, like, kids are just so, like, they're so
Exactly.
sensitive and so loving. It's like, "Oh, I love you. I'm not going to leave you," you know?
You know what's the most fascinating part that I learned when we actually adopted?
Yeah.
There's always this question of who does the child look like,
Mm.
right? I have a whole joke about about that also in my adoption story. But what the caseworker that was working with us, the social worker,
Yeah.
what she told us was more than the core looks, where they start looking more like you is their expressions, because they are learning your facial expressions and they express the way you express. And so whether you like it or not, she's going to evolve to be more like you because of her facial expressions. And that to me was fascinating. Like, if you really think about it, there are some people who literally look like each other because you can see the similarity. But then there are others who behave so much like each other. You're like, oh man, you know what I mean? Those little facial intonations, like the brows getting in there.
Yes.
And I see that every day. Like, I'm looking at my little one. She's literally a reflection of our behavior.
Wow. Who is she
the big
more like?
one.
She more like you or your wife?
So my older one is more attached to my wife. The younger one is more attached to me.
Interesting. And that's just because, I mean, do you spend more time with the younger one than the older one?
I have no explanation. I don't know.
Yeah.
It is how it is.
But she's picking up your, like, what is the expression that she's picked up from you where you're like, okay, that's...
Oh, the eyebrow for sure.
Oh my God, I have totally seen her do it too.
I have a picture of her we were at a restaurant, Indian restaurant, and she's a big fan of gulab jamun.
Oh my God.
The sweet round thing.
So cute.
So she ordered a plate of gulab jamun, and then as usual, I cut it into small pieces for her. And there's like the two big ones got cut into like 10 small pieces. And I said, "Can I eat one?" And she goes, "No." Immediately, right? And I took a picture of her and I have posted it on Facebook too. She just has this stern look like, no, you don't get any of it.
That's so cute. That is so adorable. I mean, I feel like your daughters are, I mean, does your older daughter know that the little one is adopted? Is that a conversation?
I think she's the one who told the younger one eventually. That's how she got to know, more than us telling her.
The older one told the little one, "You're adopted." Yeah. Was that in a matter of when they were fighting over a doll? You're adopted. It's like, no,
absolutely, right? So that's the other fascinating thing that I've learned, right? Yeah. This whole noble feeling of having adopted a child lasts for like 48 hours. All right. After that, when the child wakes you up 6th time in the night, you just want to choke slam her, like, sleep, like the Undertaker. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so even the older one, when she's like, when am I going to have a sibling? When am I going to have a brother? When am I going to have a sister? Right. And so when the younger one came home, she was all excited. Day 2, she's feeding her bottled milk and everything. And then within a few days, she realizes, this is encroaching my territory.
Yeah, right?
Now my attention is gone. Now she's getting attention. So the jealousy kicks in. It's just like, if you have siblings, you know how it is in your own childhood. We're seeing the same thing happen with our kids.
Yes.
My older child is exactly like my older sister. My younger child is probably a lot more like me. I don't see that similarity, but I do see the older one being like the older one, right? Very manipulative, very mean.
That's really fucked up, Samson.
It is the truth.
I think you're just talking shit about the older siblings, man.
They deserve it. I can tell you're an older sibling.
I have 4 older brothers, Samson. 4 older brothers. I'm the youngest and the only girl. And
maybe it's a brother-sister thing. Maybe older brothers are better than older sisters. Who knows? I have an older sister.
I'm
just
not
kidding. Just kidding.
I'm sure. I can tell you that, like, everybody, like, anybody who ever meets me and learns that I have 4 older brothers, they're like, "You must have been a princess." I'm like, "Princess?"
I was the beat down from everybody. Right?
I was the fucking rag
bag.
Everybody got to, like, fucking punch and, and you as a girl, like, when you grew up with boys, I mean, I have all these like pictures of me as a child. I refuse to wear my dresses. I'm constantly wearing my brother's clothes.
You want to blend in, right?
You want to blend. I think I'm a boy for the longest time. My mom had to literally sit me down one day and was just like, "You're not a boy, you're a girl." Mm-hmm. And I remember being like devastated when I heard the news. I was like, devastating news. I don't like it. I want to be a boy because, you get to blend in with your brothers and you get to play with them. But I feel like...
And actually, that's the thing that annoys the older kids the most is the younger one is so clingy to the older one because they are your first line of defense. You don't know anybody else. And the older one is just like, give me my space, leave me alone, let me do my thing, right? And so that's what makes the sibling rivalry.
It's so cute, but it sounds to me like, so when the older one revealed to the little one, "Hey, you're adopted," did she cry? Did she not understand? Did she come to you guys and be like, "What's adopted?"
I think that was literally the first reaction she had. Like, what does that mean? And I remember explaining it to her more than once. So I don't remember exactly in what chronology and what exactly happened, but it's a question she has asked it a few times, like, what does adopted mean? What does adopted mean? Then it went from what does adopted mean to why am I adopted? Then it changed to why did my mommy not want me? Right? So her questions keep changing. And it's not like you answer once and it's done. They'll reappear because it takes a time to process the whole information as well.
Sure.
So that has happened over a period of time. Again, right now I haven't heard it from her for a long time, but it's somewhere in there and it will pop up again. And when it does, let's sit and talk, ask anything you want, and I'll answer it to the best of my abilities without twisting or manipulating anything.
Yeah. And I you're absolutely right, Samson. That is the best way to go about it, right? Because sooner or later they'll be like, "You lied to me," and you don't never want your child to say that. You're like,
exactly right. Like now, not only do you have to watch what you say, but now you have to make sure that everybody else that she interacts with also watches what they say.
That's right.
Way too much of an overhead.
That's right. Because sooner or later she's gonna find out whether you like it or not.
Exactly. Especially when she has an older sister.
They're fighting over a doll. She's like, "You adopted." It's funny because my brothers will fight with me and I would fight with them over their cars because I would like want to play with their cars. My brother would be like, "You're adopted." And I go back to my mom like, "What? What adopted?" My mom is like, "Look in the mirror. You're a copy of me." "No, you're not adopted." Jesus.
Dude, that's another thing I've seen. Like my sister looks so like my mom. And my sister's daughter looks so much like them. It's like you can tell they're a family. And my older one has
Russian
also
dolls, like coming out of each other. Like.
Dude, really, it is Russian doll mechanism. Someday I'll show you the pictures, right? The three of them next to each other. It's amazing.
That's adorable. Is your sister? Are you? Now, I know your parents are still in Mumbai, right?
Right.
And is your sister in Mumbai too?
Yep.
So they never moved out to Israel. They never wanted to move out and live there.
So you asked me one thing earlier about did my parents grow up religious? Did they practice religion and all that?
Yeah.
My dad's theory always has been do as I say, not as I do. So he's like, hey, you wake up and you go to synagogue on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sleep in.
That's messed
You
up.
be the good boy. You go learn about the religion. You go do all the prayers. You go figure out things. I'm gonna sit at home. You go do this. And that was the other part that annoyed me. It's like, why are you waking me up at 6 a.m. when you refuse to do it yourself? Like, why should I do it and you don't get to do it?
Right. Shouldn't you be leading by example?
Yeah. So that is the thing that never made sense to me. My mom was like, but my dad's also he's not very religious, but he has symbolism, right? So he has a lot of like he'll wear a Muslim cap, he'll wear a Punjabi kada, he'll have a cross on his magnet on his closet and all kinds of things, right? So there's a lot of mixed symbolism everywhere.
Right.
And then my mom sort of similar, right? She like celebrate everything.
Right.
Okay. And I sort of grew up that way, like let's celebrate everything.
Yeah.
But then I don't know how Muslim festivals go, but I learned very quickly. Growing up in India, Hindu festivals, obviously you know a lot about Hinduism.
Sure.
And Jewish festivals.
Yeah.
Basically come down to, hey, they came to kill us. We killed them instead. Let's eat.
That's it.
So if you really think about it, almost every festival is celebrating a genocide. The survivor is celebrating killing the other side with like good food and wine. And
Oh, Samson, you're going to be so popular among the religious people. No.
Somewhere that bothered me too. All right.
Yeah.
And this actually, if you want to go slightly deeper, you know the Jewish festival of Purim.
Yom Kippur?
Purim.
Purim.
P-U-R-M,
Yeah,
right?
Purim. Yeah.
One of the two happy festivals in the Jewish calendar, because every other Jewish holiday, you regret your existence. By the way, one of my newest jokes, do you know why Jewish men make the best husbands?
Why?
Because of Yom Kippur. Every year, ever since our childhood, we are told to apologize for no reason.
Hilarious. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is that what you do? Like Yom Kippur, are you supposed to go to the synagogue and ask for forgiveness? Is that it?
It's the Day of Atonement. So you ask for forgiveness for anything you might have done wrong all through the year.
Oh, boy.
How much more married can you be?
Man,
Right?
you are prepared to get married. Like, you are
Yes.
so prepared.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so Purim, the story goes Queen Esther and her brother and the prime minister wanted to wipe out all the Jews, but her brother and she cracked the whatever and saved the Jews, right?
Got it.
And so there are 14 chapters to the story. And we read that Megillah, as it's called, every year in the synagogue. It's read in Hebrew.
Yeah.
And the other thing that bothers me about prayers is it's done in Hebrew, a language which half of us don't speak, saying things that half of us don't believe,
Yes.
to a room full of people, half of whom are asleep, right? So prayers are torture. And we read that book every year, and we are told the story that, hey, the minister wanted to kill the Jews, but the queen saved the Jews, so let's celebrate. Those are the first 13 chapters.
Wow.
And I actually read the English version of the book.
Okay.
Let's see what these 14 chapters are. The 14th chapter is they foiled his plan, but then the Jews massacred the people who were supposed to massacre them. And that's the celebration. Then I look at Hanukkah. Hanukkah is the same story. There was a war, they fought, they survived, celebrate. Passover, same story. You've seen the 10 Commandments, right? They're
Sure.
walking through the desert for 40 days
That's
and 40
where
nights.
people go. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what happens at the end of it? The ocean drowns everybody. Obviously made up shit. There's something you probably, whatever, you drown them in the ocean. You murder all their firstborns. You know what I mean? It's all about killing. So every single Jewish and Hindu festival is about, they came to kill us. We kill them instead. Let's celebrate. And so I don't know how and when this happened, but I stopped celebrating everything.
Wow.
So
Even the food, but you have no problem eating the food, though.
I'll eat the food. What has food got to do with it?
That's true. Listen, they're celebrating by eating food, man.
I'll eat the food, right?
Yeah.
So I don't go to any place of worship, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't plan to celebrate anything. I don't light the candles. I don't put up things.
Yeah.
My wife was the other extreme. She was my family's mindset, like, hey, let's celebrate everything. I'm like, okay, you celebrate everything. I celebrate nothing. We'll end up celebrating whatever we celebrate.
Right.
So some year we have a Christmas tree, some year we have a Hanukkah at home, some year we have the what's it called, the little lantern for Diwali,
Yeah.
all kinds of things that would show up at
Well,
home.
you don't have a mezuzah at your house, though.
I had one in San Francisco, right? Because I felt like I should have one because back home in India, and it was the first home we had bought. So like, we'll put that up if nothing else as a decorative piece, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we put that up, but when we moved to Fremont, no.
They're like,
By then I had reached the peak of my anti-religious logic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had gone through the phase of, I call this the evolution of me. I
Yeah.
went from being religious to
Yeah.
being agnostic,
Yeah.
where I was like, you know what? I don't know if there's a God, but just in case there is, I don't want to piss him off.
Okay. Fair.
To then being an atheist, being like, dude, like grow up, take a side, right?
They're like, none of
If
that.
you're an agnostic, I basically tell you like grow a pair and pick a side. Like why are you just leaning in the middle? Like maybe there's a God, maybe there isn't. Maybe there's another.
That's true.
Dude, it's not that hard.
I mean, Samson, your wife is Hindu. You're Jewish. I mean, as a comedian, like, did you start comedy in India or did you start comedy in America?
No, there was no stand-up in India when I was growing up, right?
That's
Most
true.
of it was all mimicking famous actors and
Sure.
making voices based on various accents of India.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a good voice modulator. So for me, stand-up happened in America
Mm-hmm.
much, much later in my life. I started when I was 30.
Okay.
And sort of accidentally, it was more like, hey, this looks like fun. Let me try it. And then I jumped in and I could not stop.
And you were married already by this time, right?
I was not.
You were not married. Okay.
So before I got into stand-up, I used to partake in a Bollywood dance group. I think I've told you that part. You remember, right?
Yeah, that's where you met your wife. Yeah.
That's where we met, correct. And so 2006 was the year of transition where my stand-up took off and my Bollywood disappeared. And the beginning of 2006, I was still teaching Bollywood classes.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of 2006, I had quit dancing completely. I was only doing stand-up like 5-6 nights a week.
How do you get into teaching Bollywood dancing in where? Is it San Francisco?
In the San Francisco Bay Area. So I didn't teach in the city. Before I moved to San Francisco, I used to live in the South Bay, right? The Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, Mountain View area. And our dance group was based out of the South Bay. And we used to conduct classes there. And the classes happened because it's a bigger revenue stream than the live shows.
Mm-hmm.
As an artist, you should know that, right? So we used to do live shows, but not frequently enough. And the founder of the group, she wanted to do this full time. So classes was the way to generate more income.
Yeah.
And so we started doing the classes. And wasn't the most fun thing for me, but I understood why it was done, so I would do it.
Yeah.
And in 2006, I had moved to San Francisco. And Sunday mornings at, what time did my class start at? 8 a.m., 10 a.m., I forget. 10
Jeez,
a.m.
on a Sunday?
On a Sunday at 10 a.m. So I had to leave from San Francisco at 8 to get to South San Jose, which is not San Jose, like South San Jose. Like it's way down there. It used to take me like an hour and a half to get there.
Jeez.
So I did that for about a quarter or two, and then I think a quarter. Then I switched from the San Jose location to the Fremont location because it cut my commute into half on a Sunday morning. And then I was like, dude, I'm not a morning person. Forget about this. I'd rather do stand up at night.
I don't blame you. I mean, how did you even discover stand up? Like, did you have other like Indian or South Desi or South Asian Indians that were like,
three big moments. Yeah, three big moments, right? That impacted me getting into stand up. Number one was when I came here, I was working in tech, and one of my tech friends took me to watch a show of this comedian Don McMillan, the PowerPoint comic.
Okay.
And he does all his comedy in PowerPoints. It's all about, hey, he comes from a corporate world. He's a former sales guy from a technology background. And he's like, death by PowerPoint. That was his whole spiel. It was hilarious, right? And we had seen it at the San Jose Improv. And I loved it. And I'm like, this is great, but not for me, right?
Yeah.
Because I'd only seen white guys do comedy. And maybe some black guy has done it, right? And I didn't know there were any Asian, Latino, or Indian people doing stand-up at the time. My world was too small.
Yeah.
Then in 2005, that Russell Peters clip went viral. And back then, you didn't have all the YouTubes and things, so people would actually share files.
Yes. Yeah.
And that file landed in my inbox. And I watched that, and that was the first time I'm like, oh, there's an Indian dude doing stand-up? Maybe I should think about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know how to start, where to start, what to do. So I was sort of like, this is a good idea, but I don't know how. And then one of my friends at the dance group found this thing called San Francisco Comedy College. And she said, hey, why don't you try this? And I'm like, what? There's a college for stand-up? And it's more like the name is San Francisco Comedy College, but it's more like you do workshops there, right? You pay by the month and then you workshop with them every week.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, this is a good way to get started since I don't know how to start. Go to a place which teaches you how to start.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started. In 2005, I did a couple of months in 2005, I did a couple of months with them. And then they have these grad shows, right, where you actually get to perform on stage.
Uh-huh.
So my first grad show was at San Jose Improv.
Wow.
My second grad show was at Roost City Feathers.
Wow.
And after a couple
club is it in Fremont, Tea Rooster, or is it in San Jose?
Sunnyvale. Closer to San Jose, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And then after a couple of months, I sort of was still stuck in that Bollywood mode in 2005. Yeah. So I didn't pursue for a while.
Yeah.
But then in January of 2006, so first thing, we would shut down at the end of the year, the dance club, because all the Indians are in India. There's nobody to teach.
Yeah.
So we had a downtime.
Sorry, so the dancing thing was a side hustle because you were already working in tech, right?
Yeah. Dancing was more like fun thing, a hobby thing, and it turned into a little more than that.
And then meet the ladies through that. Yeah.
And so Jan 2006 was the downtime. We had no classes, no shows, nothing. And I was like, hey, let me try and see how many things I can do in stand-up. And so I started reaching out to the bookers, be like, hey, can I get a spot? Can I get a spot? Can I get a spot? Try to do open mics as many as I could. Try to do showcases as many as I could. And I would drive up to San Francisco every evening.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm just going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then February of 2006, I got a chance to move to San Francisco because the company I worked for had bought another company. And the headquarters was San Jose, but the new company was San Francisco. And I moved to that division.
Mm.
So I lived in the city. I worked in the city. And then stand-up took off, right? I had a motorcycle. I could run from like one room to another. I could do like 3-4 shows a night.
That's right.
So yeah, that was my peak period. I think it was like 2007, 8, 9.
Yeah.
But I was doing 3 shows a night, 6 nights a week, and then fell sick.
I mean, that sounds like it kind of sounds like doing
lot.
comedy in New York City. You know, New York City is the same way. I mean, honestly, Samson, like the last time I was in New York, I went in 2019. I got flown out twice to do shows, different kind of shows. In one night, I did 5 shows one night.
See, the thing though is if you're doing shows which are because of density in closer proximity, it's not so bad, right? I would do a show in like Sunnyvale and San Francisco and then Pleasanton in one night. And that is ridiculous.
That's right.
That's what made me sick.
Commute.
It's a lot of driving.
Yeah.
In fact, the craziest story I have about what I've done in a single night. I had an 8 p.m. spot in Sunnyvale at Rooster Feathers.
Okay.
And at 8 p.m., there was another show, or 9 p.m., I think. It was kicking off in Sacramento.
Jeez.
So I did the opening spot here. The host knew that I had to make it to Sacramento. So he did very short up front, just like the intro. I went up, I did my spot, got out. I had my 1000cc sport bike back then.
Jeez.
And I made it to Sacramento. Usually takes 2 hours. I made it in 19 minutes. And as I'm driving in there, right, Hassan Minhaj was hosting that show that night. Wow. And he's on stage and he can't leave until I get there because all the comics are done. So he's just like stalling. And then I get there and the other comic, the producer, he's at the door and he's like, dude, like you are up now. I'm like, okay. I turn the key off. I leave the bike there. I give him my helmet. As I'm walking up the stairs, I'm taking my jacket and my pants off, like the riding gear. And I walk straight up on stage and I'm like, somebody get me some water. And the show starts. Like literally like rock star kind of a life, right? That I spent back then. This was like my second year in comedy. And I'm like, whoa, this is awesome, right? I'm just riding a motorcycle, walking up club, just throwing my shit up. Hey, here I am. Here's the show.
This is some Bollywood hero stuff right there, man.
But that was ridiculous. Like driving from Sunnyvale to Sacramento at dark in 90 minutes is insane. I would never do it again in my life, right? I never did, obviously. But
isn't it amazing though, Samson? Like when you look back, I mean, I have those moments when I look back sometimes and I'm like, fuck.
What was I thinking, right?
Like, what the hell was I thinking?
That was the craziest story that I'll never forget. It's like, how do you do an 8 p.m. spot in Sunnyvale and 10 p.m. spot in Sacramento? You can't, nobody will even plan to do it. And I actually was like, I'll pull this off.
That's crazy.
And I was the only guy who was common on the 2 shows, right? This was a tour. So like over here, we had a bunch of Indian comics. Over there, we had a bunch of Indian comics. And I was the only one doing both shows.
Wow. So this show, the one you went to in Sacramento, that Hassan Minhaj was hosting, but Hassan has started comedy at the same time as you, or was he doing comedy a little longer than you?
I think he started before me, but not long before me. Okay. But he definitely started before me. Because when I was getting up there, I would see him around.
Got it.
But it's one of those things, right? When you're starting out, you don't know know much. So we might have started close to each other.
And I honestly, Samson, like I think when you started, and even Hassan and even myself, it's like when you see fellow South Asians, you're like, oh my God, thank God.
Yeah, there's an immediate bonding, right? It's like, oh, I'm not alone.
Yes, I'm not alone. Oh my God, somebody like he's also doing. Oh my God, thank God.
In fact, there were 3 comics that I knew, Indian comics, right? And Hassan was one of them. I shouldn't call him Hassan. It's Hassan Minhaj.
Yeah.
Tapan Trivedi, who was the producer of that tour. He did this thing called Pundits with Punchlines.
Okay.
Right? So Hassan, Tapan and me used to do a lot of those shows. And then there was other cast of rotating comics. And this is how it had happened. There was another tour called, what is it? Indian, Paul Varghese, Raj Sharma, Dan Nainan, Gurus of Comedy, something like that. They had a tour. And they did like a whole bunch of shows across the US. And they had a show in San Francisco, and I missed it because I was doing a show somewhere else. And then on Sunday night, they had a show up in Sacramento, and I went up to Sacramento to watch them. I'm like, man, this is an Indian comedy tour. I got to go watch them, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I met Tapan. And he's like, wait, you came up from San Francisco to watch the show? I'm like, yeah. And are you a comic? Like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And the next thing I know, I'm on his shows again.
Wow.
And there was another comic by the name of Nitin Kant.
Okay.
So he stopped doing comedy years ago. But those were the first Indian comics that I knew of, right? And then you were probably the first or second Pakistani comic I knew of.
Yeah.
And
you knew Shazia, and then you met me.
I think I got introduced to Shazia before you, because Shazia was doing a show at Punchline, and I was booked to open for her.
I mean, Shaz is a pioneer, right?
She's one of the early ones, right? She broke through so many, And which, funny enough, the first time I did a show with her, I had no idea who she was. I'm like, I'm getting a spot in the Punchline. I have to host. Yeah, I'll do that. For who? All right, there's a British Pakistani Muslim comic coming in. And that was literally my opening joke at the show. Not the opening joke, like my introduction for her.
Yeah.
No, for the middle comic. So it was Shazia headlining, me hosting, and there was another comic in the middle, and I'm blanking out on his name right now. He's a gay Filipino comic, from San Francisco.
Okay.
And so I was like, hey, listen, this show, there's a lot of tension because you have a Indian, Jewish man from America. You have a you have a Pakistani Muslim female, like Indian Pakistani, male, female, Jewish Muslim, American British.
Yes.
That's a lot of tension. And in order to diffuse the tension, Punchline decided to put a gay Filipino in the middle. And I got like the biggest laugh of the night, right? It was so funny. And I was just like, it just felt funny for me to say that.
Yeah, that's good.
In the moment. Yeah. And that was the first time I met her.
Yeah.
And obviously it was another like, hey, South Asian, yay, nice to meet you. Right? So immediately we stayed in touch.
Yeah. Shazia had been doing comedy for a while. I mean, Shazia
she was headlining the Punchline. Of course she's been doing it, and she's doing it successfully.
Right. She was like touring the world. I mean, Shazia and I have just become really good friends in the last few years. Our friendship has just kind of thrived a lot, and it's interesting, It's
the show we did, the United We Stand Up, August of 2014.
Yeah.
We did it on August 14-15, India-Pakistan Independence Day.
I remember you calling me up and being like, Mona, I'm thinking about doing the show where we bring Indians and Pakistanis together. We're going to do the show. And I was like, sign me up, dude. Let's do this. Yeah.
Right? So Shazia was in town.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, that's a big plus. And I asked her like if she would like to do it. And she said yes. You were the other one coming in from LA. And I was like, hey, if you can do it, I don't know what I'll be able to pay you, but early days, right? It was early days for me. It was early days for you. So I know you had just come up without any money guarantee.
Honestly, I didn't even expect any money. I was like, just a spot alone for me.
Yeah, right. And then Imran G was an Indian Muslim guy on it.
Imran still does comedy, right?
Oh, yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And then Daya was the other one.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I also was very aware of is we wanted a good divide of male-female comics, right?
Yeah.
So it was Daya and you, me and Imran. And then Shazia happened to be here. So that became like a 5-person show.
Yeah. I mean, it was 5 of us, right? I just remembered as the original 5. And I was one of the original. That's what I remember.
Because that is where the whole seed for Desi Comedy Fest got planted in my head, right?
That's right.
My first idea was, hey, let's see even if you can take an Indian-Pakistani mix of comics and bring Indian-Pakistani audiences together to watch a show. Is that even possible?
That's right.
And it was, right? We had 2 amazing shows. They weren't full, but they were like half full, right? And I didn't lose money producing the show. I didn't make money either. But I was like, dude, like this is great. Like we know we can do this. There's an audience for it.
That's right.
Between August 2014 and August 2015, I was like, man, there's a Latino comedy festival, Jewish comedy festival, Arab American comedy festival, all kinds of comedy festivals. Why don't we have a South Asian comedy festival?
Yes.
And that was the whole genesis of Desi Comedy Fest.
Yes.
In August 2015, we launched with those 4 shows. You didn't do the 2015 because it was just the local comics.
That's right.
We had 11 comics from the Bay Area doing the shows.
Yeah.
And then 2015, sorry, we did it in 2013. You know what I think? 2013 August is when we did the United We Stand Up. And then March 2014, you were here and you had stayed at my place even in 2013. And that's why when you came back in 2014 with your mom, you're like, hey, can I crash? And then the adoption happened at the same time.
That's right. That timeline makes sense. But I still am not sure how in God I met you. I'm still trying to figure out.
Yeah. Why did I call you for the show in 2013? How did that happen?
I don't even know. I don't know.
There was something else we did before, and I don't remember what it was.
Yeah. I don't even know.
Did you do my Oakland club before 2013? Do you remember? It was by the waterside.
Maybe. I don't even remember. I think you know what I love about Desi Comedy Festival, and Desi, for the people watching this, don't know what that means. It means slang. It's slang for South Asian. That's how we refer to each other. Like Puerto Ricans call each other Boricuas. The Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Nepalese, we all call each other Sri Lankans. We all call each other Desi. Like local. Desi means local, right?
Exactly. Desi is local. Paradesi is foreign.
Paradesi is foreign. I mean, I think what I love about the Desi Comedy Festival, besides the fact that I've been on it a gajillion times, and you do such a good.
You did the Portland Seattle edition too. I remember.
That was awesome. Hey, Portland Seattle was a great addition. We stayed in the house in Seattle.
Was so much fun. Road trip.
Accident because you were speeding and weren't paying attention, and then I screamed, and then there was the brakes were being hit. I remember that. I was like, no, we could have all just somehow ended up in the hospital, but somehow this is the problem with me. When I drive, I'm a fast driver, and I'm really learning to curtail that. But when I'm a passenger, I'm like on the eyes on the road. And I think we were all just chatting and having a good time. And I was like, yo, we're going to die today.
It was like 6 comics in the car, and it was getting rowdy.
It was getting very rowdy.
Yeah. And I remember the scream. I remember it very, very well. But there were multiple voices and went, ah! And I was like, what? Right? And we were driving from Portland to Seattle.
It was a white Prius. I remember that. I don't know why I remember a white Prius or a white car. Oh, white wagon maybe. Like I think you had rented one.
We had rented like a big SUV or a minivan because we were 6 comics driving, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It was Abhay, Richard, me, you, Priyanka.
Yes.
Oh no, there was 5. It was a regular car.
And Meg wasn't there. Meg and Dirty was there.
But did Meg do both shows?
Meg just did Seattle, I believe.
That's what I think, right? She and Mohana did Portland. Mohana did Portland. Neeraj Srinivasan did Portland. And in Seattle, we had Meg. Yeah. And that was it.
But you know what? This is the cool thing, right, Samson? So Mohammed is Arab, isn't he? Is he Persian or Arab?
Libyan.
Libyan. Okay, so he's Arab. He's African more than anything.
That's not Arab, yeah. See, we had this discussion one time, right? Which is when he said, I'm from Libya. Like, oh, so you're from North Africa. And he goes, man, you didn't call me an Arab. I'm like, yeah, isn't that like the Arabian land is different and then where you're from is not Arab? And he goes, yeah, but in America, you're an Arab.
Yeah, you're an Arab, exactly, because he has the name Muhammad, right?
Yes.
And I think what I love about the comedy of Desi Comedy Festival and the way I've seen it, kind of metamorphosized over the years, is the fact that you're very inclusive, right? You bring in Persian comedians, you bring in Libyan comedians, you bring in, I think have you ever had like Latino comedians or Black comics?
Yes.
There you go.
We've also had a white comic.
Well, we gotta have the token white guy.
We had one. He was Irish, like from Ireland, Irish.
Wow.
And he had the set of the night that night because nobody expected a white dude to walk up with an Irish accent on stage, and they were all like, "We are at the South Asian Comedy Festival. What is this white Irish dude doing there?" And he murdered that night. He was so good.
Good for him.
And yeah, we had a Black comic. We had a Puerto Rican comic. We mixed it up completely, right?
Yeah.
And there were 2 reasons for it, right? One is funny is funny.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It doesn't matter what color skin, what gender, what height, you know what I mean? Like, if some comic is funny, they're funny. And I wanted to put a show which is like, oh man, Samson is producing a show, we're going to have an awesome time. That's the reputation I had built up.
Right.
I want to put the best comics that I like on this. And it was not just all the comics I like. Obviously, there were some comics I had no idea, but they're like, hey, you should be on this, right?
Right.
And then the other part was, you do realize after 3 years of doing it, right? Because we did the first show, the original 5. Then we did the first 2 years of Desi Fest.
Yeah.
You do realize there's only so much, even a Desi audience can listen to a Desi comic, 6 Desi comics back to back to back to back.
Right.
So you got to put some spices in there, no? You got to mix it up, right?
Yes.
It's got to be a little bit of a variety is the spice of life. So it's like, all right, throw in a Latino comic here, throw in a Black comic there, throw in a East Asian comic here, throw in a Middle Eastern comic there. So a lot of Irani, Egyptian, Syrian, Lebanese, Japanese, Koreans, Vietnamese, everything.
You had
Right?
Kazu. You had Kazu Kasano on, didn't you?
Exactly. And she was so good. Yeah, she did so good. She did.
Oh, she's so great. Kazu's great.
So we had a mix of everybody, right?
Yeah.
But the core was always Indians and Pakistanis. And we used to seek out to find Afghani comics and Sri Lankan comics, like anybody we can find with that diverse heritage of South Asians. Let's definitely put them up. But let's keep borrowing from around as well and diversify the lineup a little bit within, because this is what I remember. In 2016 was our biggest lineup. We had 55 comics that year.
Wow.
Right? 55 South Asian comics plus some non-South Asian, right? But majority, like maybe 45 of them were South Asian comics. Mm-hmm. Not a single repeating last name.
What?
Right? And I was like, dude, this is the diversity in South Asia, right? 45, not a single repeating last name. That's, you got to realize. Like,
have two Patels, not.
No two Patels, no two Singhs, right? No two Sheikhs, no two anything. Everybody had a different last name.
Wow. How interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, during the pandemic and stuff, have you tried to do online Desi Comedy Festival at all? Are you thinking about?
We have not done the festival. We did a couple of fundraisers for folks, but right now I'm on a self-inflicted hiatus from my comedy club for a month. Like I just decided to take a month off, the whole month of January, and I'm not doing any shows right now
because you also do the Oakland Comedy Club that you have, right?
So that's what the shows are happening. The other two guys are running it. I've taken a break because I honestly enjoyed that live element, right? That's what I would thrive at. It's like, hey, be there.
As stand-up, that's what we live for. We live for it.
So I've been doing these online shows since April, and they've been like, some have been good, some have been okay, some have been bad, just like live shows, but overall, it's the enthusiasm has sort of like dipped.
Yep. I mean, honestly, Samson, also, if people are experiencing, this is a new thing during the pandemic, which is Zoom exhaustion. This is a real new...
Dude, especially because I work all day on Zoom. So I just go from one Zoom to another Zoom.
Precisely.
And then the worst part of it is the show's over, you click, and then you're sitting home alone. It's like, what a dud.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, when the pandemic hit, I was doing like shows for the first 3 months, right? I was doing them pretty much, putting them on every week, and it's exhausting. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even get to have the human contact. It's all virtual. This sucks, you know? And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to put that on hold, and I'm just going to do these live streams because this is a lot more interaction to me than, doing stand-up. Like,
there's some social element to this, right? You get to chat, you get to joke, you get to be yourself.
That's right. Get to be yourself.
When you're doing the show, it's a little different.
And also, I get to know my comedian friends in a way that I've really never gotten a chance to know them, right? I've never gotten a chance to know this side of Samson before. And that's why I want to know this part of you, right? We've never talked about the adoption story. I knew you brought the baby home, but we've never talked about that. I didn't know what kind of stuff you grew up in India, what that life was like for you. Who were you before you became, Samson the comedian? Like, I want to know that, I at least for me, I'm dorky like that. I like I'm a fan.
All good. I'm happy to talk about me all day long.
I'm sure you are, Samson.
That's what makes us a comedian, no?
Yeah, you know what it is, Samson? For me, it's like the older I get, the more I'm just like, don't ask me cookie cutter questions.
Mm-hmm.
I get bored very fast, very easily. I'm just like, don't ask, because I honestly, every time I interview for my podcast or for even my Mona's rants that I do, this is what tomorrow's going to be my 65th episode. My Mona's rants, I'm already at 116th episode.
Nice.
I mean, I've just been like, I live stream 5 days a week. I mean, it's, so every day I get to talk and hear new perspective and learn something new. But I think for me, it's just like, I don't want, the older I get, more and more I'm beginning to really despise interviews more and more.
You know what I have learned about interviews is it's not the question that's annoying, it's the follow-up question that's important. Right? You ask me a question, that's fine. Like 100 other people have asked me that. We are talking for the first time. You ask me the question, I'll answer it.
Yeah.
It's the follow-up question that you come up with that tells me whether you're engaged or you're just like, hey, here's my list I'm going to walk through.
Yes.
Let's go through the motions.
Yes.
So to me, the follow-up questions are more important than the questions.
Yes, I agree with you. For me,
Very
Samson.
few people can ask a really good lead-in question, and that's less like some of these. Like right now, we're talking, right? You realize I have a work call at 7:30, and I just noticed that some people have joined the Zoom, so I got to jump in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you don't realize the time, right? Because it just flies by. You're like, hey,
That's
we
right.
should do this again. Let's spend another hour and a half talking.
I'm totally
so much fun, right?
Welcome back anytime, my friend.
And then there are others where you're like, dude, I've been here 45 minutes. Can we cut this now?
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want that. Well, I'm not gonna keep you too long, but I'm gonna bring you back again. If not on a podcast, but on Mona's Rants, we'll bring you back on and we'll have another powwow discussion. But Samson, I sorry, and I know you have to run, but where can people listen to your adoption story? I mean, are you going to put that up?
I will put that video out now that I've verbally committed to it officially. So I have the video. I just had to edit and cut it out. I'm not doing any special effects. It's just like start and end and just get it out there. So I will get it out February this year. How about that? And then I'll share it with you and I'll share it with everybody. And it's one of my best stand-up routines I've ever written. Right?
Awesome.
It started with like one joke, like a one-liner, and it became a 25-minute segment.
Wow. Good for you. Yeah. So now, where can people follow you, Samson?
My website, which is pretty dormant. My Facebook, which is pretty dormant. I don't tweet. I don't understand Instagram. But
that sounded like an old man. You're not an old man.
I'm not an old man. I just didn't bother for Instagram. It was like too many to try. And Twitter is too noisy. I don't get it. So I'm on Facebook. That's where I post most updates about my shows. Yeah. And the weekly shows that I was doing with Comedy Oakland, my club, is every Friday, Saturday. Yeah. I should be back on the rotation there soon. On hiatus right now, but hopefully soon I'll be back again.
Awesome. And they can find you at just Samson Koletkar, right?
You can Google here's what I tell everybody, right? Forget the names because it's hard to spell and remember. Just Google Indian Jewish comedian. You'll find me. You'll find my YouTube channel. You'll find my website. You'll find my Facebook. And I am happy to connect everywhere.
Awesome.
I don't respond to YouTube comments. Haven't responded to a single YouTube comment in my life.
Wow.
For all the videos I put up there. So email.
Just so you know, as an inside information, YouTube rewards you when you respond to those comments. Just so
every social media thing does now. Like they want you to waste your time staying engaged on their channel. So it's like, hey, you respond, you get higher points.
Precisely. All right, my friend. Lovely chatting with you. We'll bring you back on again. I'm going to let you go because you have a call.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mona. Right, good talking to you too.
Same here. Take care.
Bye.
That was the lovely Samson Koletkar. I know you guys enjoyed that conversation because I definitely did. And I learned so much about Indian Jewish culture. Who knew? Like, isn't that's why everybody needs to travel. People need to get a passport, travel the world, man. You will learn some incredible stuff about incredible things. And I'm very fortunate that I have friends like Samson Koletkar who can sit with me virtually and just tell me what it's like to be Jewish in India and, how Jews even came to India, how that whole population even came into existence. I love that. Gino asked me a question. Gino said, Mona, has your speaking voice ever started getting weak from too much use? On his question, sometimes it depends, Gino, how many Zoom calls I've had. Sometimes I have Zoom calls from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. and then I got to do a hour and a half, 2 hour, the session. So sometimes my voice begins to crack, or sometimes you also kind of maybe hear me kind of running out of breath a little bit because I'm like, oh my God, my throat is exhausted. So yeah, sometimes that happens. And thank you for asking that question. And thank you for your observation on that. Karen said, this is a really interesting show. Thank you very much, Karen. I hope you enjoyed that. James said, Mona, don't forget to tell us about your next gig. I will, James. I actually have some really great news. So I was supposed to headline a show next Thursday, but it got pushed to March 4th because, drum rolls, is there any drum rolls? I'll do the drum rolls. I cannot reveal the name of the show, but let's just say I have landed my first major television network gig that I'm very, very excited about that I cannot tell you. And it shoots soon, and when it comes out, I would be more than happy to share it with you guys. and tell you when my next gig is. So until that shoot takes place, all gigs are kind of put on hold. And then after that, it's going to resume, and I'm going to go back to doing so I'm very excited. This week has been a very big week for me thus far. That's why I'm pretty exhausted. But I feel very blessed. I feel very honored. Thank you very much. Thanks, Gino. Thanks, James. Thanks, Karen. I'm very excited. This is a very big deal for me. It's my first major network contract, and I'm very, very excited about it. But I would be more than happy to share it with you guys next week. Or whenever I'm done shooting this thing and they say it's okay for me to share. But you guys, I will be back tomorrow with another amazing guest. She is a tech genius. Thank you, James. You're so kind. James said, I'm so happy for you. Karen said, yeah. James said, hooray. Gina said, congrats. Thank you, guys. And I will be back tomorrow. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, it would be amazing. I am up to 801 subscribers. Trying to get to 1,000 in the next 2 months or so. So it would be really great if you guys could go and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Mona Sheikh Comedian, which is on youtube.com/Mona Sheikh Comedian. Same goes for Facebook. Same goes for TikTok. And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Mona's Comedy. You guys, I will be back tomorrow. Stay safe out there. Have a good night. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to watch the playlists, guys. That's where I'm trying to rack up my watch hours so I can be monetized. So, and that would be all, honestly, I would be so thankful to you guys if you guys can go and watch these playlists. That would be the Minority Reports playlist, which is all these interviews that I do with all these cool people, plus Mona's Rants. You can also watch that. Plus my stand-up is there, blah, blah, blah. I will see you guys tomorrow, 6:15 Pacific. Have a good night. Stay safe out there.